All right, we're gonna start our pre-trip. First thing we're gonna do is we're gonna pull the keys out of the ignition and put them in your front pocket. Key in your pocket. And then we're gonna go to the front of the truck. First thing we do when we look at the front of the truck, we're gonna look for our leaks and our leans. Our leans are gonna be, look down each side of the truck. Our lean could be caused from a flat tire, load shift, or a broken suspension part. Then we're going to move to our leaks. We're going to go down. We're going to look underneath the truck. We're going to look for anything leaking, which would be coolant, fuel, power steering fluid, anything like that. Next thing we're going to move for is we're going to go to the top. We're going to start at the top. We're going to work our way to the bottom. We're going to go up to our clearance lights. We're going to go up to our clearance lights. Our clearance lights are properly mounted and secure, not cracked, bent, or broken. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. Our clearance lights, what's special about our clearance lights is they should be amber and they should be clean. Moving from our clearance lights, I'm going to come down to my windshield. My windshield is properly mounted, secure, not cracked, bent, or broken. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. What's special about our windshield is there should be no illegal stickers on our windshield, and our windshield should also be clean. Moving from our windshield, we're going to come down to our wipers. Our wipers are properly mounted, secure, not cracked, bent, or broken. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. What's special about our wipers are they're made out of rubber, so there should be no abrasions, bubbles, cuts, or dry rot. And our wiper should be firmly against the window. Moving from our wipers, we're going to come down to our mirrors. We got our door mirrors. We also have our fender mirrors. We want to make sure that our mirrors are properly mounted and secure, not cracked, bent, or broken. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. What's special about our mirrors is you want to make sure that the glass is clean, no illegal stickers, and you'll be able to tell if they're adjusted for you when you get inside the truck and do your in cap. Moving from our mirrors, we're going to come down to our headlights. We have a left headlight and a right headlight. These are a high-low beam. They are properly mounted and secure, not cracked, bent, or broken. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. What is special about the headlights is they should be clear in color and clean. From our headlights, we're going to move to our turn signal and marker lights, left and right. Marker light is properly mounted, secure, not cracked, bent, or broken. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. What is special about those marker lights is that they are a marker, turn signal, four-way flasher, and a reflector, and they are clean and they are amber in color. From our left and right turn signal and marker lights, we're going to move down to our license plate. Our license plate's properly mounted and secure, not cracked, bent, or broken. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. What's special about my license plate is it should be clean and it should be current and up to date. After that, we will go underneath the hood and we will go to the unique side of the truck. When I do my unique side or under the engine compartment, I start at the top and work my way to the bottom. So come to the top, as soon as I get this rubber on, come to the top, and we're going to start. Really nothing up here I got to talk about, so we're going to come right to here. This is our exhaust. Our exhaust is properly mounted and secure, not cracked, bent, or broken. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. What is special about our exhaust, you want to make sure that there are no black soot marks anywhere along the exhaust that would indicate an exhaust leak. Moving from our exhaust, we're going to come down here. We're going to come to our alternator. Our alternator is properly mounted and secure, not cracked, bent, or broken. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. What is special about our alternator? We have wires coming off our alternator. There could be no illegal fixes. You also want to look for any black marks that would indicate arcing. Burn marks would indicate the alternator has shorted. Also, the alternator has a belt. My belt is properly mounted and secure, not cracked, bent, or broken. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. What is special about the belt? Made out of rubber, so there can be no abrasions, bubbles, cuts, or dry rot. And also, you want to make sure that your belt has no more than 3/4 of an inch of play in the belt. From our belt, we are going to move around. There's nothing else we really got to talk about. We're going to come over here to our windshield washer reservoir. Windshield washer reservoir is properly mounted, secure, not cracked, bent, or broken. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. What's special about the windshield washer reservoir? It has a cap, so it should be hand tight. Windshield washer holds a fluid, cannot be leaking. Okay, this is it for our unique side. We're going to move around to the driver's side. As we come over to the driver's side, again, we're going to start at the top and work our way down to the bottom. First thing I come to is my coolant reservoir. Coolant reservoir is properly mounted, secure, not cracked, bent, or broken. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. What's special about our coolant reservoir? Well, it has a cap. Want to make sure the cap is hand tight. You want to make sure that the coolant reservoir is between add and max. If it needs fluid, you add fluid to it. Also, it holds a liquid and it cannot be leaking. There are also rubber hoses coming off of the coolant reservoir that cannot have any abrasions, bubbles, cuts, or dry rot, and the hoses also cannot be leaking. Moving from our coolant reservoir, we're going to come to our oil fill, and down here is our oil dipstick. This is where we check the oil. So to check the oil, or actually the oil fill and the oil dipstick are properly mounted, secure, not cracked, bent, or broken. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. What's special about the oil is to check it. You want to pull the dipstick out. You want to wipe it off. You want to make sure that it is between add and full. If it is down at the add mark, you add oil, and right up here is where you add oil. And this has a cap, so the cap needs to be hand tight. And also, you should not be leaking any oil. From our oil dipstick, we're going to move back. This is a little bit hard to see, but right here, down in here, see if I can get down in there, is our power steering pump, and attached to our power steering pump is our power steering, or our air pump. So you have your air pump and your power steering pump, and both of those are properly mounted and secure, not cracked, bent, or broken. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. What is special about the power steering pump, and actually the air pump is right there. What's special about our power steering and air pump is that they are gear driven. The power steering and air pump hold a fluid or a gas, and they cannot be leaking. There are rubber hoses coming off the power steering pump and hoses coming off the air pump, and they cannot have any abrasions, bubbles, cuts, or dry rot, and they also cannot be leaking. From our power steering gearbox, or from our my power steering pump and our air pump, we are going to come out to our power steering reservoir. Our power steering reservoir is properly mounted and secure, not cracked, bent, or broken. All nuts and bolts are present tight. What's special about the power steering reservoir? Well, it holds a fluid. It cannot be leaking. It has a cap. The cap has to be hand tight. And there's also rubber hoses coming off of the power steering reservoir, and they cannot have any abrasions, bubbles, cuts, or dry rot, and they also cannot be leaking. Also, you want to make sure that you are between max and minimum. Alrighty, coming from our power steering reservoir, we're going to come to our power steering shaft. It has an upper universal joint, a lower universal joint. It is properly mounted and secure, not cracked, bent, or broken. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. What's special about it is you want to make sure that there is no more than a quarter of a turn play in the steering shaft itself, and you want to make sure that your U-joints are greased. Moving from there, we're going to come down to our power steering gearbox. This power steering gearbox is properly mounted and secure, not cracked, bent, or broken. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. What is special about the gearbox? Well, obviously it has rubber hoses coming off of it, so they cannot have any abrasions, bubbles, cuts, or dry rot. The hoses and the gearbox hold a liquid, so they cannot be leaking. From there, I'm going to move to our steering components. There's a couple components here, so I'm going to name them all off as I go. Right here is component number 1, which is your power steering pitman arm. From the pitman arm, you have your drag link. From your drag link, you have your upper control arm right there, and then down here, you have your lower control arm, and then right here, you have your tie rod. Then at the end of your drag link, you have your ball joints. Right here's one. Right here's another ball joint. And then up on top, you have a castle nut and a cotter pin. And up on this side, another castle nut and cotter pin. All those are properly mounted and secure, not cracked, bent, or broken. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. Okay, what's special about all those parts is the ball joints need to be properly lubricated. Okay, now that we're done with our power steering system, we're going to move to our suspension system. Our suspension system consists of, this is a front suspension mount. Way back here is a rear suspension mount. Then you have your leaf springs, 2 of them. You have 2 U-bolts. Here's one. Here's another one. Then you have your shock. Then you have your lower shock mount. Up here you have your upper shock mount. All those parts right there are properly mounted and secure, not cracked, bent, or broken. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. What is special about this system, the suspension system? First off, you want to make sure that all your leaf springs are here and they are stacked on top of each other. None are cracked or missing. Your U-bolts, you want to look for any shininess around your U-bolts. That would indicate looseness. Also, your shock holds a liquid or a gas and it cannot be leaking. From my suspension, I am going to go to my brake system. My brake system has a series of parts. I usually do 2, 4, 2 on the brake system. So my first two parts are my air line and my brake chamber. And this is a single brake chamber because it is smaller. You will see the double brake chamber later. This is a single brake chamber and the air line. It is properly mounted and secure, not cracked, bent, or broken. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. What is special about the air line and the chamber? Air line's made out of rubber, no abrasions, bubbles, cuts, or dry rot. It holds the air, it can't be leaking. The chamber has an air in it, so it cannot be leaking. From my air chamber and my brake line, I'm going to my 4 parts, which is my slack adjuster. This is my cotter pin right here. My clevis pin goes through. So cotter pin, clevis pin. Push rod is right here that goes through into the brake chamber. And those parts are all properly mounted and secure, not cracked, bent, or broken. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. What is special about this? With the brakes released, I should have no more than 1 inch of play with the brakes released in my slack adjuster. From my slack adjuster, cotter pin, clevis pin, and push rod, I'm going to go to my brake drum and brake pad. The brake drum and pad are properly mounted and secure, not cracked, bent, or broken. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. What is special about the brake drum and pad? The brake drum cannot have any illegal fixes, cracks, or welds on it. The brake pad needs to have at least a 1/4 inch of pad left, and the pad and drum should be free of any debris, grease, or oil. And that is your brake system. From my brake system, I'm going to come out here to my tire. These are front tires. Think about TCP, tread, condition, and pressure. First thing I'm going to talk about is the tread. Well, my tread should be evenly worn. My tread should be either radial or bias, but it cannot be intermixed on the axle. It's either all radial across this axle or all bias ply tire across this axle. Also, the tread, these cannot be a recap tire. Front tires cannot be recaps. Front tires can only be virgin rubber, no recaps. Then I go to my condition. Well, it's made out of rubber, so there is no abrasions, no bubbles, no cuts, no dry rot. Also, I go now to my pressure, P. Pressure will be listed on the side of the tire, or if your company wants you to run a different pressure, it'll be listed somewhere on the side of the truck or on the rim. To check your pressure, you can either use a tire thumper or use a tire gauge on your air valve. All right, speaking of that, our air valve is properly mounted and secure, not cracked, bent, or broken. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. With the air valve, you should have a metal cap, and the valve stem should also be metal also. So you have your valve stem and it holds air and it cannot be leaking. From your valve stem, we're going to go to our wheel. Our wheel is properly mounted and secure, not cracked, bent, or broken. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. On your wheel, what's special about it, you want to look for any cracks. There cannot be any illegal welds on this wheel. If it is welded, it is no good. You do not want any cracks from hole to hole, and you cannot fix those cracks. Also on this wheel, you want to look at your lug nuts. Your lug nuts are all properly mounted and secure, not cracked, bent, or broken. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. On your lug nuts, you want to look behind your lug nuts for any shiny marks that would indicate looseness, or any oblonged holes, which would indicate the whole tire itself is loose. From our lug nuts, we're going to come down to our hub. Our hub is properly mounted and secure, not cracked, bent, or broken. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. The hub holds a liquid, so it cannot be leaking. Also with the hub, if there is no sight glass here, you have to pop this cap off right here and stick your finger in, and you should get oil to your first knuckle. That's how you check the fluid in that hub. From our hub, we're going to move down the side of the truck. We're going to come to these two lights right here, this light right here, and this one back here. They are 3 things on this truck. They are a marker, a turn signal, and a 4-way flasher. They are properly mounted and secure, not cracked, bent, or broken. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. They are clean and amber in color. Okay, moving from there, I'm going to come to my door. You want to make sure that your door is properly mounted and secure, not cracked, bent, or broken. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. You want to make sure that your door opens. You want to make sure your door shuts and stays shut. Also, while you have your door open, you want to check your door's rubber seal for no abrasions, bubbles, cuts, or dry rot. And you also want to check to make sure that your door is mounted solidly, which it is. Okay. From our door, we're going to come down to our batteries. Our batteries are in this compartment right here. Our batteries are properly mounted and secure, not cracked, bent, or broken. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. The batteries have wires coming off of them, so you can have no illegal fixes on the batteries. The batteries also hold a liquid and they cannot be leaking. From our batteries, we are going to go to our steps right here and back to our steps and catwalk here. Our steps and catwalk are properly mounted and secure, not cracked, bent, or broken. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. What is special about the steps and the catwalk? Well, you want to make sure that they're both free of debris, any ice or oil on them that would cause you to fall. Once we are done with the steps and the catwalk, we're going to come up. We're going to do our fuel tank with the cap and the vibration isolators and strap. Those all are properly mounted and secure, not cracked, bent, or broken. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. What is special about this fuel tank? Well, your cap has to have a rubber seal. Also, the cap has to be hand tight. The tank itself holds a liquid, so it cannot be leaking. The straps and the vibration isolator. The vibration isolator is made out of rubber, no abrasions, bubbles, cuts, or dry rot. And the straps should be properly mounted and secure, not cracked, bent, or broken. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. Okay, moving back the truck. We're going to come back here, and before I go any farther, if we were hooked up to the trailer, you want to make sure 303. You want to have 3 feet from here to the front of the trailer if we were hooked up. 0 inches between the fifth wheel plate and the apron of the trailer, and also 3 feet from your mud flap to the landing gear of your trailer. 303 if we were hooked up. Okay, so now that we're here, we're going to come to the back of the truck. First, you want to look at your reflectors up there. You want to make sure that your reflectors are properly mounted and secure, not cracked, bent, or broken. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. Also, you want to come down. You want to look at your lights, your work lights. They are properly mounted and secure, not cracked, bent, or broken. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. They're clear in color and they're clean. Moving down, you want to come to, I go to my frame and my cross members. My frame and cross members are properly mounted and secure, not cracked, bent, or broken. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. What's special about the frame and the cross members is this frame cannot be fixed in any way. It cannot be welded or cut. It cannot have any drill holes in it. And moving from our frame and our cross members, we're going to come down to our drive shafts. Right here's a drive shaft. Up here's probably better. Here's a drive shaft right there. There's a drive shaft right back here. And there's actually another one way up front. There's 3 drive shafts. You have a front, intermediate, and rear. Those are all properly mounted and secure, not cracked, bent, or broken. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. What's special about the drive shafts? They have universal joints at each end. You want to make sure that they're properly lubricated, and you want to make sure that there is no debris in your drive shaft. From there, we're going to come to our exhaust. Our exhaust is right here beside the drive shaft, and it is properly mounted and secure, not cracked, bent, or broken. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. And again, you want to look to make sure the exhaust has no black soot marks that would indicate a leak. From our exhaust, we're going to come back, and if we were hooked to the trailer, I would unhook my glad hands from the back of the trailer, but we're not hooked up to the trailer, so I'll just do it right here. What you want to do is pull your glad hand off. You want to look at your glad hand. You want to make sure that it is properly mounted and secure, not cracked, bent, or broken. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. You want to make sure that your glad hand is free of any debris. There's nothing in the hole that will obstruct the air to go through. You also want to look at your air line on your glad hand to make sure that there are no abrasions, bubbles, cuts, or dry rot. Same with the rubber seal. No abrasions, bubbles, cuts, or dry rot on the rubber seal. Once you are done with that one, you can check your other side if you wish. Just pull it off, do the same thing, check for no abrasions, bubbles, cuts, or dry rot, and everything's properly mounted, secure, not cracked, bent, or broken. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. There went my drink. Also, you want to check your electrical line for the same thing. You want to check to make sure there are no abrasions, bubbles, cuts, or dry rot on the electrical line itself. You also want to check both sides. You want to check this side to make sure there are no pins stuck in the holes. And on the front of the trailer, you also want to make sure that there are no broken off pins inside there. Also, when you're hooked to the trailer, you want to make sure that your trailer lines, your air lines, and your electrical lines are not rubbing on the catwalk. Okay, moving back, I'm going to come to my debris deflector. My debris deflector is properly mounted and secure, not cracked, bent, or broken. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. Nothing really special about the debris deflector. Moving from there, we're going to go to our suspension system on the back of the truck. Pretty much the same as the front, except there's a couple little oddball differences. So on the back here, we have a front mount. Right back here underneath the airbag, we have a rear mount. Then we have a leaf spring. Again, 2 U-bolts. Here's one. Here's one. Then you have a shock with a lower and an upper shock mount. The difference between the front and the rear is you have an airbag with an upper and a lower mount. So all those parts are properly mounted and secure, not cracked, bent, or broken. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. Again, just like the front, what is special about it? You want to make sure you have no missing leaf springs. You want to make sure your leaf springs are stacked on top of each other. Also, you want to make sure there's no shiny marks that would indicate looseness anywhere on these U-bolts. And that would indicate looseness. Your shock also holds a liquid and a gas. It cannot be leaking. Then you have your airbag. Airbag's made out of rubber, so there should be no abrasions, bubbles, cuts, or dry rot on the airbag, and it also should not be leaking. Okay, moving to our brake system back here. Pretty much the same as the front, except a couple little oddball differences. This right here is your brake chamber. Look how big it is. This is a double brake chamber. Also noted by 2 air lines coming into it. So you have your brake chamber, which is a double brake chamber, and your 2 air lines. They are properly mounted and secure, not cracked, bent, or broken. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. What's special about the air chamber and the brake lines? No abrasions, bubbles, cuts, or dry rot on the hoses, and the chamber and the hoses holding air. They cannot be leaking. From your brake chamber, you're going to go to your slack adjuster. Your slack adjuster is properly mounted and secure, not cracked, bent, or broken. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. The parts to the slack adjuster are just like the front. The slack adjuster, the cotter pin and clevis pin, which are clear down around here. It's a little bit hard to see, but it's clear down around in on this side, right here. And you have your cotter pin, slack adjuster, push rod, and clevis pin. They are all properly mounted and secure, not cracked, bent, or broken. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. Your push rod, just like the front, should have no more than 1 inch of play with the brakes released. Moving from those 4 parts, we're going to come out to our other 2 parts. This is our brake drum right here and our brake pad. Drum and pad. Just like the front, properly mounted, secure, not cracked, bent, or broken. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. The drum cannot have any illegal fixes, and the pad should have at least 1/4 inch of pad left. Okay, moving from there, we're going to come to our tires. But first, before we go to our tires, we're going to go to our bud rims. These are bud rims because they butt up against each other right here. Okay, so these are bud rims. The bud rims are properly mounted and secure, not cracked, bent, or broken. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. What's special about our bud rims? I'm going to make sure that they're touching each other. There's no gap right here. And also, you want to make sure that there's no debris between the tires. Coming out to our tires, TCP again, just like the front, tread, condition, pressure. Your tread, just like the front, has to be evenly worn. These can be a radial or a bias, but they have to be all radial across this axle or all bias ply across this axle. Cannot intermix radial and bias on an axle. Also, these tires are not the front tires, so they are a 2/32 tread minimum. The front is 4, these are 2. These have to have a minimum of 2/36-inch tread. From our tread, we go to our condition. C, no abrasions, no bubbles, no cuts, no dry rot on the inside or outside of both sets of tires here. Then you go to your pressure. Your pressure will be listed on the tire itself with the company, or the manufacturer of the tire wants you to run, and or if the company wants you to run something different, it will be on your trailer or on your rim. Okay, how do you check the pressure? Again, just like the front, you can use a hammer or tire thumper, or you can go to your valve stem and check the pressure there with a pressure gauge. Speaking of your valve stem, it is properly mounted and secure, not cracked, bent, or broken. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. Must have a metal cap, a metal stem. It holds air and it cannot be leaking. From your valve stem, we're going to go to our rim. Our rim is properly mounted and secure, not cracked, bent, or broken. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. The rim, just like the front, cannot have any illegal fixes. It cannot be cracked from hole to hole, and it cannot be welded. From your rim, you're going to go to your lug nuts. Your lug nuts are all properly mounted and secure, not cracked, bent, or broken. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. Just like the front, you want to make sure there are no shiny marks in behind the lug nuts. You also want to make sure you can't see any part of the hole behind the lug nut. That would indicate an oblong hole and a loose wheel. From there, you're going to go to, this is an axle. The fronts are hubs. The back drive tires here are axles. They are properly mounted and secure, not cracked, bent, or broken. All the nuts and bolts are present and tight. You also want to make sure that the axle, it holds a liquid. You want to make sure that it is not leaking. From there, I would go right to this axle and do the same thing. Suspension, brakes, bud wheels, tires, rims, hub, or rims, axles, lug nuts, but we're going to skip that to save time. From there, I'm going to go to my fifth wheel. There's 11 parts on the fifth wheel. I usually break it down 4, 3, 4. So my first 4 parts are, this is my fifth wheel mounting rail. This whole thing right here is your fifth wheel mounting rail. Okay? Then you have your fifth wheel mounting rail bolts right here. All these bolts are your fifth wheel mounting rail bolts. Then you have your fifth wheel slide rail. Then you can't see it, but inside here is your fifth wheel locking pin. Those 4 items, the mount, the bolts, the slide rail, and the locking pin are properly mounted and secure, not cracked, bent, or broken. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. What is special about those 4 parts? You want to make sure that your locking pin is in the locked position so your fifth wheel does not slide. From those 4 parts, we're going to go to the other 3 parts, which are my release handle. If it had a gate, there would be a gate back in here, but this is not equipped with a gate, so we don't have one, but we will still mention it. And this right here is our pivot pin. Okay? Gate, which is back in here, release handle, pivot pin. Properly mounted and secure, not cracked, bent, or broken. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. What's special about this, if we were hooked to the trailer, this would be in the locked position. Our locking handle would be in the locked position. Now we're going to go to our other 4 parts, which is this thing right here shaped like a triangle is your fifth wheel mount. This is your platform that mounts your fifth wheel to the frame of the truck. So this is your fifth wheel platform. Then we have our actual fifth wheel plate. And then up in here, hard to see, but the locking jaws. All right, so again, fifth wheel mount right here, this triangle shape, fifth wheel platform, fifth wheel plate itself, and the locking jaws. Those are all properly mounted, secure, not cracked, bent, or broken. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. What is special about those 4 parts? Fifth wheel plate needs to be properly lubricated. The locking jaws need to be around the shank of the kingpin whenever we are hooked up to the trailer. That's your fifth wheel. Moving on. Since I'm here and I see it, right here is a torque bar, and there's one right up front here too. These torque bars are properly mounted and secure, not cracked, bent, or broken. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. Moving back here, we're going to come to our mud flap. Our mud flap is properly mounted and secure, not cracked, bent, or broken. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. Our mud flap, what's special about it, needs to be at least 2 to 8 inches off the ground. Okay, moving in. Gonna come to my lights back here. First one I'm gonna come to is my reverse light. My reverse light is properly mounted, secure, not cracked, bent, or broken. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. What's special about my reverse light? It is clean. All lights have to be clean. Clean and clear in color. Then I'm gonna go to my left and right brake lights. These are a brake, a turn signal, a 4-way flasher, a marker. Those are properly mounted and secure, not cracked, bent, or broken. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. They are a left and a right, need to be indicated. They are clean and they are red in color. From there, I'm going to go to my license plate light. Properly mounted and secure, not cracked, bent, or broken. All nuts and bolts are present and tight. It is clean and it is clear in color. And if you want, you can mention your reflectors back here. They're red in color and they are just a reflector. Pause.